We had a text group between the local snipers that were on scene. I had sent those pictures out to that group and advised them of what I noticed and what I'd seen. I assumed that there would be somebody coming out to, speak with this individual or, find out what's going on.
Members of the SWAT team describing both a failure in planning and a failure in communication. And they told ABC News that it started with this briefing, that they were supposed to have a face-to-face briefing with U.S. Secret Service snipers before the rally took place, but that never happened.
We were supposed to get a face-to-face briefing with the Secret Service snipers whenever they arrived, and that never happened. So I think that was probably a pivotal point where I started thinking things were wrong, because that never happened, and we had no communication with the Secret Service.
That includes warnings that they picked up and they were talking about amongst themselves about this suspicious individual who would turn out to be the would-be assassin, that were raised hours in a group text with just the local snipers in it, about 90 minutes before the rally took place. I want to read some of these text messages at 4:26 p.m. Again, this is over an hour and a half before the rally started. Kid learning around building we are in, a little typo there. I did see him with a rangefinder looking towards stage. If you want to notify SS snipers to look out, I lost sight of him. An hour and a half before the rally started, texted the concerns about the shooter, an hour and a half before the rally started, and it's unclear if that warning ever made it to the Secret Service.
And how did that site survey get approved when it was so clear that that was a major threat from that building?
Our Pittsburgh field office did the advance. During that advance, not only were they discussing amongst themselves about mitigating the line of sight, but also they were discussing with other agencies that were supporting it. Our counter snipers met with their counterparts. They walked the site. They identified the AGR building. This is from the second floor of the AGR building. This point of view is the point of view where the counter sniper team locally was posted. The gold arrow indicates where the shooter fired from. Looking left, why was the assailant not seen? When we were told that building was going to be covered, that there had been a face-to-face that afternoon, that our team leads met. Let me show you another view, Senator. There was a 5-inch rise on the middle of that roof. The assailant would have had to present his bore over that to get his shot off. The view underneath reflects the perspective that he would have had. Again, I call your attention back to the first exhibit if they'd have looked left. Shooter, no elbows. You barely make out the crown of his head. Below it, the assailant up prone. These were discussions that were had between the Pittsburgh field office, the local counterparts, and everyone supporting that visit that day. And I will not, and I cannot understand why there was not better coverage, or at least somebody looking at that roof line when that's where they were posted.
Local law enforcement in Butler told my staff that they had no way of communicating directly with the Secret Service. And if I listened to Mr. Abatte saying there was about 30 seconds between when the local law enforcement reported that there was a man on the roof with a gun, 30 seconds, if it's communicated directly to a counter sniper team, would that be enough time to react prior to the firing of those shots?
Senator, if we'd had that information, they would have been able to address it more quickly. It appears that that information was stuck or siloed in that state and local channel, but they also had radios on the tactical net. It is troubling to me that we did not get that information as quickly as we should have. We didn't know that there was this incident going on, and the only thing we had was that locals were working an issue at the 3 o'clock, which would have been the former president's right-hand side, which is where the shot came. Nothing about man on the roof, nothing about man with a gun. None of that information ever made it over our net.
How often at one of his rallies are there 90 minutes of looking at one person and at least a half a dozen pictures of that person? How often does that happen? And is it against protocol to let a proceeding go on when you've got a suspicious person, 90 minutes worth of people talking about this person, and we don't stop the proceeding? Does that defy protocol?
So Senator, while there's 90 minutes in total from when he's first identified by local law enforcement, we have about a 30-minute window. But in no time is there anything ever communicated about weapon or harm.
But you got 20 or 30 minutes of knowing about it. But the thing is, there's all kinds of chatter going on about this. And you would think the chatter going on with the local police is on a police radio, and a policeman with that radio is standing in the control tent, so you get that communication.
So, Senator, at rallies, there are people that come to the attention of law enforcement for a variety of reasons. Local law enforcement did their very level best to try to locate him. They did provide us the photos 30 minutes prior. It's just he evaded any detection by law enforcement.
Standard to say, hey, we're going to wait until we get this individual. The roof and the 90 minutes of it, both I think are failure of your protocol. And I think when that's determined, the person who made these decisions can't be in a position of authority again.
I think this was a failure of imagination, a failure to imagine that we actually do live in a very dangerous world where people do actually want to do harm to our protectees. I think it was a failure to challenge our own assumptions, the assumptions that we know our partners are going to do everything they can, and they do this every day. But we didn't challenge our own assumptions of, we assume that someone's going to cover that. We assume that there's going to be uniformed presence. We didn't challenge that internally during that advance. So moving forward, I've directed that when we're talking to people and we're making requests, we are very specific about what we want. We are providing explicit instructions on exactly what our expectation is and what we need them to do and what we want them to do. And we need them to be partners with us, and I think we need to be very clear to them, and that may have contributed to this situation.
Next, one of the things you mentioned was just the texting protocol. It's about how people are just texting all the time instead of talking, and how it takes their eyes off, in your case, the target. What might have gone wrong there, and how you think things could change?
It was great that there was a text chain, but that communication needs to go over the net. It needs to go over a radio channel so that everyone has situational awareness of it. We have to get to a point now where we are using our radio systems. I want people using the radio, but we have to be able to make sure that whenever we come across a situation, that everyone has situational awareness of this. In my time when I was operational in the President's detail, we were given the explicit instruction, hey, if you're going to pass it, if it's relevant enough that you feel like you need to pass that information, do it over the radio. And that was the protocol that we had. And I think over the years, perhaps with the advent of technology and smartphones, perhaps we've gotten away from that. And the radio interoperability it's a complex challenge. It's not just about being able to find whatever frequency our local counterparts are on and then just piping it in. There's some technical challenges that have to be there. Communications that day at the Butler farm site were challenging, not just challenging for the Secret Service, but for challenging for locals. There were some cellular issues. There were radio issues, and you saw that with the testimony from the colonel from Pennsylvania State Police last week in the House. The other thing that I'm looking at is we need to also make sure that we have redundancies as far as cellular on the ground or additional repeaters.
Secret Service deployed a counter unmanned aerial system operator. The drone system was supposed to be operational at 3 p.m. that day. However, we've been told by Secret Service that because of cellular bandwidth problems, it wasn't operational until about 5:20 of that day. Why is the Secret Service dependent upon local cellular network?
That what if we had geolocated him because that counter UAS platform had been up? And I have no explanation for it. We could have perhaps found him. We could have maybe stopped him. Maybe on that particular day, he would have decided this isn't the day to do it because law enforcement just found me flying my drone. People fly drones all the time on the peripheries of our sites. On this day in particular, because of the connectivity challenge, as you noted, there was a delay and he flew his drone at 3:51 approximately. We are leveraging resources from the Department of Homeland Security and others to make sure that we have dedicated connectivity so that we're not reliant on public domain, so that we can ensure that whatever assets we have in place, those assets are operational.
All elements of an event communicated on the same channel.
So when it comes to the locals, they likely have some type of common channel that they work off of in a county or an adjoining municipality. When it comes to the Secret Service, we do have various channels for various agents and our uniformed division officers working specific aspects of that advance.
So it's not possible that the delay in communication or the losing of the thread of tracking this individual was sort of lost in the commotion of all of the other communications that could have been, or maybe was sort of separate from the communication channels that were happening.
Senator, I can only speak to the Secret Service. We did not have anything beyond suspicious person that was communicated to us.
Help us understand the communication that either was or was not happening directly with the former president's detail to make the call to delay 10 minutes, 20 minutes.
So the detail, they were operating on their net, which our security room was monitoring. But again, having information of a suspicious individual that never really rose to a level of we should not put him out there. Had we known that there was a dangerous individual out there, we would never let a protectee go out on stage.
Why is there not a Secret Service counter sniper on that roof?
When we post up, our methodology is to look at things that can see in on our protectees. So that they can provide that coverage.
But why is there not a Secret Service counter sniper there with clear line of sight? That roof has a clear line of sight to the former president. Why didn't you put a Secret Service counter sniper there?
The Secret Service's counter sniper role is to neutralize those threats that are looking in on us from where the protectee is, not necessarily
You think maybe you might want to revise that protocol in light of what happened here?
They were protecting the principal, and I think the
principal got shot. Who was the lead site agent who made the decision to leave the AGR building completely outside of the security perimeter? Who was that?
Senator, I cannot give you that name. This person is operational. They're still doing investigations. They're still doing protective visits.
Have they been relieved of duty?
They are still cooperating, not only being interviewed by the FBI, but also by our Office of Professional Responsibility. And we will let the facts of the mission assurance and any further investigations play out.
Isn't the fact that a former president was shot, that a good American is dead, that other Americans were critically wounded, isn't that enough mission failure for you to say that the person who decided that building should not be in the security perimeter probably ought to be stepped down?
Senator, I think you're using the word decided, and I think we need to allow the investigation play out to include.
So who did make the decision then? If it wasn't the lead site agent, who made the decision not to put that in the security perimeter?
Senator, you're zeroing in on one particular agent. I want to find out exactly what was the entire decision process. So I think I want to be neutral and make sure that we get to the bottom of it and interview everybody in order to determine if there was more than one person who perhaps exercised bad judgment.
Well, sure. My question is, why don't you relieve everybody of duty who made bad judgment? So yeah, you're right. I am zeroing in on somebody. I'm trying to find somebody who's accountable here. And you're telling me that the person who made the decision not to include this in the perimeter has not been relieved of duty. What about the person who's in charge of the interoperability of radio frequencies between local law enforcement and Secret Service? Has that person been relieved of duty?
No, Senator, because interoperability is a challenge, is a greater challenge than just one person. On that day, we had a counterpart system. It failed spectacularly.
Has the person who made the decision to send Donald Trump onto stage knowing that you had a security situation, has that person been relieved of duty?
No, sir, they haven't.
Has the person who decided not to pull the former president off of stage when you knew that, in your words, the locals were working a serious security situation, has that person been relieved of duty?
No, sir. Again, I refer you back to my original answer that we are investigating this through a mission assurance. And as opposed to zeroing in on one,
what more do you need to investigate to know
exactly what the decision-making process was? What more do you need to investigate
to know that there were critical enough failures that some individuals ought to be held accountable? I mean, what more do you need to know?
What I need to know is exactly what happened, and I need my investigators to do their job. And I cannot.
A lot of people didn't do their jobs.
I cannot put my thumb on the scale. Otherwise.
What do you mean put your thumb on the scale?
You're asking me, Senator, to completely make a rush to judgment about somebody failing. I acknowledge this was a failure of the Secret Service.
Is it not prima facie that somebody has failed? A former president was shot.
Sir, this could have been our Texas school book depository. I have lost sleep over that for the last 17 days,
then
just like you have.
Somebody to hold them accountable.
I will tell you, Senator, that I will not rush to judgment, that people will be held accountable, and I will do so with integrity and not rush to judgment and put people unfairly persecuted.
Unfairly persecuted?
Unfairly,
we've got people who are
we
dead.
have to be able to have a proper investigation into this, Senator.
I don't really care that much about your protocols. I think if your protocols don't provide for the fact that when a former president is shot, when an American is killed, when other rally goers, innocent people who just showed up on the day, when they are shot at and critically wounded, if that isn't a protocol violation prima facie, you should revise your protocols.
Senator, I think this is where you and I agree. This was a failure, and we will get to the bottom of it.
Real Clear Politics reports this morning that you were directly involved in denying additional security resources and personnel, including counter snipers, not just to this event, but over the last 2 years, that President Trump's team repeatedly asked for these additional resources, and you personally were involved in denying them. Is that true?
Senator, as I stated earlier, that is not true.
So you never denied any resources to former President Trump's team?
No, not me. No, sir.
And you weren't involved in any of that? You were never involved in the decision-making?
No, sir, I was not.
Well, whistleblowers tell me that, in fact, law enforcement were stationed to be on that roof and that law enforcement abandoned their post because it was too hot. Is that accurate?
Senator, I have heard that as well.
But do you know if someone was supposed to be on the roof? Do you know if someone was in fact? That's what the whistleblowers tells me. That may or may not be accurate. Do you know that to be the fact? Was somebody posted to the roof, local law enforcement or whomever?
I do not know that to be a fact.
Well, can I ask you why you don't know that?
We are looking at this, and they should have been on that roof. And the fact that they were in the building is something that I'm still trying to understand.
I just want to express my frustration, Director, that 17 days or whatever it's been, that whistleblowers are telling us more than you are, and you don't know, you haven't ascertained if there was supposed to be law enforcement on the roof. That seems like a pretty basic fact. I'm also told that local law enforcement suppliers offered the Secret Service drones, and you declined them. Is that true?
So, Senator, one, I've been very transparent and forthcoming.
Your agency has not been transparent and forthcoming, so please, let's not go there.
I have been forthcoming, sir.
That remains to be seen. You've been on the job a few days. So far, you've fired nobody. Now, the drones.
Thank you,
Were you offered drones?
Senator Hawley.
So there was an offer to fly a drone on that day.
And why did you deny it?
Again, I think the ability of local law enforcement to provide an asset, we probably should have taken them up on it if it was offered.
Secret Service leadership committed catastrophic security failures. Just after the shooting, Secret Service put out an official statement from your spokesperson that says there's an untrue assertion that a member of the former president's team requested additional security resources and that those were rebuffed. This is absolutely false. Was this tweet accurate?
With respect to Butler, Pennsylvania, it is accurate, sir.
It is accurate that the Trump team had not asked for additional security and had not been rebuffed.
If you're talking about Butler, Pennsylvania, all assets requested were approved. There were times when assets were unavailable and not able to be filled, and those gaps were staffed with state and local law enforcement tactical assets.
So I'm reading from the Washington Post, July 20th, 2024. Top officials of the U.S. Secret Service repeatedly denied requests for additional resources and personnel sought by Donald Trump's security detail in the 2 years leading up to his attempted assassination, according to 4 people familiar with the requests. Is that right?
That is not accurate, Senator. Assets are requested. There's a process that is made. And
how many requests did the Trump team or the Trump detail ask for?
I can get you that number in a queue.
You don't know now.
So I can speak to the ones that were reported in the Washington Post, and we can go through them if you like.
But you don't know how many requests there were.
In general, how many requests since 2021 that the former Trump detail has made a request for assets?
You've had 2 weeks. You had a spokesperson put something out that is false on its face. By the way, did you approve this statement when it went out?
I don't know if I did or didn't, Senator.
Has this spokesperson, is he still employed? Does he still have a job?
He is still employed, Senator.
So he lied on behalf of the Secret Service. He still has a job. Did your predecessor, the former director, does she approve this statement?
Senator, our comms team, they send out statements. They do deconflict them and they put them out.
Did she approve this statement?
I don't know if she did or did not, Senator.
And you don't know if you did either?
I don't recall approving it, Senator.
And who makes the decision to deny those requests? Did you make that decision?
Which requests? Are you talking about the ones that were in the Washington Post?
Yes.
So the process, sir, is that a detail will make a request for either staffing, technical assets, that is handled between the field office and the detail. It goes up to a logistics office between our
Okay, so there's a bureaucracy. Is there a decision maker?
It's not a bureaucracy, Senator.
Give me the
it's a
person
process.
that's a decision maker. Is there one?
Senator, it's a conversation. It's not just an absolute yay or nay.
So did the same person who denied the request for additional security to President Trump also repeatedly deny the request for security to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., whose father was murdered by an assassin and whose uncle was murdered by an assassin? Did the same person make that decision?
Senator, what I will tell you is that Secret Service agents are not political.
Okay, you're not answering my question. But you know what? Leadership appointed by the president, leadership appointed by the president is political. I have a simple question, yes or no. Did the same person deny the Trump request that also denied the RFK request? That's a yes or no question.
Senator, that is not a yes or no question. One, there is a process for a candidate nominee to receive protection.
Does the buck stop anywhere? Does the buck stop anywhere?
Bipartisan process that the Hill participates.
It's a bicameral, bipartisan process. What camera?
For a candidate,
you are not a Congress. You don't have a camera. You're refusing to answer the question. Is it true that on the day of the Butler event that Secret Service transferred agent from President Trump to the First Lady?
No, sir, that's not true.
That's been widely reported.
It's not true.
What was the relative size of the Trump detail compared to the detail that is assigned to the President or the First Lady?
Senator, the former president travels with a full shift, just like the president.
What's so the exact same size? Is that your testimony that President Trump had the same size detail that President Biden has?
On the day of in Butler, the agents surrounding him, it is the same number of agents surrounding the president today. There is a difference between a sitting president who also not only
Hold on, you're using president in a way that is not clear. Is it your testimony that in Butler, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump had the same number of agents protecting him that Joe Biden has at a comparable event?
I'm telling you the shift, the close protection shift surrounding. That's
yes
what you
or no?
asked me, Senator, and I'm trying to answer it.
You are not answering it. Is it the same number of agents or not?
Senator, there is a difference between the sitting president of the United States.
Then what's the difference?
The difference?
2x, 3x, 5x,
National
10x?
Command Authority to launch a nuclear strike, sir.
I'm not
there are other
asking
assets
how many
that
more
travel
agents?
with the president that
Sir,
the former president
sir,
will
you are
not get.
refusing to
but
answer
the number
straight.
of Secret Service
Sir,
agents protecting him.
Stop interrupting me.
Go ahead,
You
Senator.
are refusing to answer clear and direct questions. I am asking the relative difference in the number of agents between those assigned to Donald Trump and those assigned to Joe Biden. I'm not asking why you assign more to Joe Biden. I'm asking, is the difference, is it 2x? Is it 3x? Is it 5x? Is it 10x?
Senator, I will get you that number so you can see it with your own eyes. Again, there's a conversation had with the details.
There's got to be a buck stopping. There's got to be someone. Who is the person? Is it a level within the D.C. agency? Is it someone in the Pittsburgh office? Who denies this?
It has nothing to do with the Pittsburgh office,
Okay.
sir. It is a conversation between not only the detail, the field office, but also.
I don't want to know the conversation. I want to know who makes the decision.
The decision, sir, is it's our process between the Office of Protective Operations and the Office of Investigations.
Is there a title for this position?
It is called we affectionately call it the War Room, and it's where all of our logistics files into.
So it's a room that makes the decision.
It is a staffing and assignments officer.
Okay. Is the Secret Service required to do a briefing with all entities of law enforcement involved in the event of the days leading up to the event and the day of the event? Was this meeting held on that day?
The police meeting took place on the days prior to that.
Do you have documents of that meeting was actually happened?
If we do, sir, I will get them to you.
But you're saying that it did not happen on the day of the event.
So I think what you're referring to is a briefing that the state and locals would have done with themselves. We did a briefing with our own folks. They briefed.
When did you? Did your people meet with local law enforcement the day of the assassination attempt?
Yes.
Okay, and you realize that the local law enforcement says no, that meeting never happened, and that's why we need to get these people in to talk to us, and this is why the FBI needs to be speaking up sooner than later and say that meeting did or didn't happen. Surely there's some type of documentation of that meeting one way or the other. Is there documentation of that meeting?
So, Senator, I can tell you that our what you're referring to is the counter sniper team seconded to Butler ESU. Our personnel met with the team lead from Butler ESU, and they discussed areas of concern, areas of responsibility, and that did in fact happen at the site on that day.
That an online profile of the shooter may have been found, and you said it contains anti-Semitic and anti-immigrant postings. Can you elaborate? Have you found anything further in the shooter's profile?
It's being closely analyzed right now. We need to verify that it is, in fact, that it belonged to the now deceased shooter and that he made these comments. So that's why I felt it important in the interest of transparency to share that here, but add the caveat that we still have a lot of work to do, which we're working on quickly to determine that. It's of importance, I think, because if it is, in fact, the shooter that posted these comments, it's the first real indication where he's expressing what are described as extremist views and talking about political violence.
I take it that once you determine that it was, in fact, the shooter who posted these kinds of comments, that you will let the public know as well as this committee?
Absolutely, Senator.
I think, in fact, it is very important that many of the perpetrators of mass shootings, et cetera, have these kinds of postings online that are very anti-immigrant, anti-Semitic, anti-everything. And it is really important as we determine the kind of profile for many of these shooters that we understand how critical it is that we are careful, how critically important it is that people are careful about what they're posting online, the misinformation, disinformation, everything else along those lines. This is for Mr. Abatte once again.
Counter sniper team that was local law enforcement that was on the second floor overlooking that rooftop. Have they been interviewed at this point?
Yes, Senator, I believe that each of them have been interviewed.
Do we know they were at that post at 6:08 to 6:11?
My understanding, and I want to be fair, I have not read the reports. They were at times during the time frame we're talking about here on post within the AGR building, and I do believe, but I would want to confirm this at some point, one or more did venture out in an effort to locate and isolate.
What we're trying to figure out is during that time period that he actually climbed on the roof, that they were able to actually see him.
I don't know the exact timing and the movements of each officer that was out there, but what I would derive from it is they were all focused on locating the shooter.
People on the ground had said there's someone up there and they have a gun that's crawling on that roof. And so they climbed up to be able to see it. He turned around with a rifle. He came down. And then at that point, he gets on the local radio that he has and says there's someone on the roof with a gun. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator, I believe that that's accurate.
What else was discussed on the radio during that 30-second time period?
Senator, we have the radio communications. The local radio communications were recorded and captured, and we do have that. The key points to me, that local officer communicating that he sees the individuals, he's armed. That's at about 6:11 and some seconds. I think it's 3 seconds. And then he identifies it as a long gun at about 6:11 and 11 seconds. And the shots, which all happened quickly together, I believe happened within probably 30 seconds. So
there's a statement that has the word gun in it that's coming out across that radio. I would think that would be communicated pretty quickly to everybody across the spectrum. 30 seconds is not long, but that's an NFL play plus a huddle plus the next play. I mean, that's quite a bit of time still to be able to respond. So trying to be able to figure out where the word gun got lost in radio communication here and what else was said.
Certainly we will share the communications with you and the committees, Senator. I will note just from my notes, there was effort within those minutes and seconds once the gun was announced. There's other communications where the local police are talking about deploying a QRF and responding, and that they've got the building surrounded. So
typically, I would assume for Secret Service, if they hear over the radio over something gun, they're moving to be able to protect the detailee, the person they're protecting at that point, the protectee. Is there any overhead drone? We've talked about counter drone, but any visibility that Secret Service had to be able to see the field and all the operation in their own ability?
No, sir. It appears that there was an offer by a state or local agency to fly a drone on our behalf.
You are the Deputy Director of the FBI, is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
Is there any doubt in your mind or in the collective mind of the FBI that President Trump was shot in the ear by a bullet fired by the assassin crooks?
Senator, there is absolutely no doubt in the FBI's mind whether former President Trump was hit with a bullet and wounded in the ear. No doubt, there never has been.
Okay.
I've been part of this investigation since the very beginning, and that has never been raised.
You're sure?
Yes.
It wasn't a space laser?
No.
It wasn't a murder hornet?
Absolutely not.
It wasn't Sasquatch?
No, Senator.
It was a bullet?
It was a bullet, Senator. 100%.
Fired by crooks?
Yes, sir.
That hit President Trump in the ear and almost killed him?
100%, Senator.
Okay. Glad we cleared that up. He was about 150 yards away. It's been reported that the snipers, the government snipers, saw him on the roof 20 minutes before. Not 2 minutes, 20 minutes before. Is that correct?
Senator, that's first time I'm hearing this. That is not correct based on the information I have right now, sir.
When did the Secret Service snipers, one of whom ultimately shot the assassin crooks, first see him on that roof?
So, sir, immediately upon the shots being fired, our snipers...
I know that, but when did they first see him? You got the guy lying there with a gun pointed at the former president of the United States. But when did the snipers first see him?
As soon as he presented himself as a target and a threat to the president, sir.
And when was that?
He fires initially a volley. I believe it was 3 shots.
No, he fired at 6:12 p.m. He was up, Crooks was up there. When did they first see him? It has been reported repeatedly that the snipers first saw him 20 minutes before. That's more than a quarter in an NFL football game.
Yes, sir.
You don't know the answer?
So I do know the answer, sir. I'm telling you that.
What is the answer?
No, they did not see him. They only
never
saw
him.
No, sir.
Well,
they did not.
How could they not see the guy? How could they not see him? They're in an elevated position. They're checking rooftops. They're looking around.
Yes,
There's
sir.
2 government snipers. How could they not see him? There he was, big as Dallas, lying there with a gun pointed at the president. How could they not see him?
I believe he was obscured by that roof, sir. He did not pop up.
The roof is flat with ridges.
he's below the line where they would have seen him, sir. There is he did have concealment. I'm not going to say it's cover. He did have concealment, and then ultimately gets into firing position and fires. And within 15.5 seconds of his first shot, he's neutralized.
I've gone way over. You gentlemen need to answer these questions.
Was law enforcement at a disadvantage due to a lack of or limited connectivity? And why has the Secret Service not adopted a dedicated satellite-enabled Wi-Fi connection, which would facilitate integrated communication, enable device connectivity to include drones, and allowing for the sharing of real-time intelligence?
Based on what I've seen, that radio connectivity, cellular was an issue that day. With respect to the satellite broadband, that is something that I've tasked our CIO, and then we're getting some support from the Department of Homeland Security on. So we will start to leverage whatever asset we have to ensure that connectivity.
Well, I can tell you that we have those SEER ratings that we have for things like the Super Bowl. We have it a lot in Las Vegas, and they do bring these mobile units to be sure that we have all the dedicated Wi-Fi cell service and integration that is absolutely necessary for securing a huge event.
What actually happened in the 30 seconds where a law enforcement officer knew that a gun was pointed in the direction of the president from a fairly short range? What did they do?
From the interviews, the officers in the immediate vicinity were operating with urgency at that point to get to this person, but he was on the roof. The shooter turned toward him with the rifle. That's what the officer observed. So he was under threat himself in that second. So he had to retreat and step down and get back to the ground in order to protect himself and keep him safe from potential rifle fire. But once he got to the ground, along with other officers, there were Butler County local officers, Pennsylvania State Police. They were moving around trying to
I think
find
clearly we had more than 20 seconds to have somehow cut through all the crap and the communications, whatever impediments there were, have to be removed. I mean, it's pretty clear to me. First off, that law enforcement officer, but they failed because their job is to protect the public, and they needed to put themselves in harm's way to stop him. Now, I'll let the interviews go through, but there was a massive failure. There were at least 2 law enforcement officers that knew a guy was about to pull the trigger at the president. I think it's very important to point out that we can't let a scenario go in the future where 20 seconds can lapse when a law enforcement officer within 2 football fields of a former president of the United States has material knowledge that somebody's about to get shot at on stage, and we don't have instantaneous response.
Of the culture at your agency, and I think it is very telling. And he sent an email, and I'm going to quote from that. If this agency needs to change, and if not now, when? The next assassination in 30 days? But here's what I want to talk with you about, because in this email, he says, and I'm quoting again, the motto of the USSS is CYA. And every supervisor is doing it now. That's the end of his quote. So you're the guy in charge. And you're one of those supervisors. You've been a career guy. And I want to know how you feel about the fact that employees in your agency are worried about covering their behind and not worried about protecting a former president.
Thank you, Senator. So I'm hurt by that email, but not in the way you think I'm saying it. I'm hurt because my people are hurting right now. We need them.
Then why did somebody delete the email?
I'll get back to you on that, Senator.
The agency deleted the email.
But look, may I address your question? And,
yes,
and I will get back to you
please.
as to whether the email was deleted or not. My agency is hurting. Emotions are raw. I actually want to hear more from that UD officer, that technician. In his email, he referenced that he had spent time serving our nation as a United States Marine, that he is a 20-year professional of the Secret Service. I am committed to being a change agent, meaning I am committed to reviewing some of these things. I looked at the points in his email very quickly. I saw it as I was on my way over here this morning. I want to have further conversations, not only with him, but also the counter sniper supervisor.
If I may step back in, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So you want to talk with him. What about other whistleblowers? What about this culture? Are you going to allow these whistleblowers to speak out? Because it is troublesome if somebody went into the server and deleted that email that espoused anti-immigrant, anti-Semitic views, but you did not say what platform that was on and what the username was. And this is crooks that we're discussing.
Yes, Senator, that's correct. I didn't want to comment on it because we haven't fully confirmed yet, and I thought that as soon as we confirm and certify,
would
I
you
will
supply
provide that to you.
And
Absolutely.
also the age at which he had those feelings. And then we understand that the Gab account is pro-immigration, pro-lockdown, leftist views. Is that accurate?
I haven't seen it directly, but I believe from what I've been told that is accurate. With the Gab account, we're also, though that's been publicly revealed through the CIO and other things, we're still working to certify and verify that that's his account also. But it does have differing points of view, it would appear.
Okay. And what age and how fresh is that Gab account?
The Gab account, based on my recollection, the comments in there or the messaging is from about 2021, I believe. Okay. And the other preceded that? Maybe he was age 14? Yes, Senator. The other account that we talked about was in the 2019-2020 timeframe. So it would have been in the couple years right before the Gab
right
messaging.
Before that.
Yes.
Are there other accounts that you all are currently verifying and receiving information from?
We are. We've, as I mentioned, we've issued a bunch of legal process, and we're still awaiting returns from a number of the companies, to include other social media companies as well.